Parts, parts, more parts, 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 parts. We need to find a storage solution for all these parts. Howdy, y'all. Yeah, that is a pile of recycled concrete Class 6 road base, because we finally made the decision to get a storage container to put all these parts in. We have a mess around here. Many of you know that Dad and I were in the excavating business for, well, 3 generations. This is kind of reminiscent of what we used to do. We're going to build a pad for this container to sit on, just to keep it up out of the moisture, out of the ground. So the base will be, I don't know, about 3 or 4 inches thick to elevate it, and then we're going to top it so that if it does get any moisture, it'll dry out. To top it, we've got this pile of, I guess it's 1 inch minus crushed concrete recycled road base, and it's basically just rocks, and that will let water kind of drain out from underneath the metal on the storage container. This is the bone pile, and it's needed cleaned up for a long time. I've got fuel tanks, backhoe tires, skid steer tires, fence posts, scrap metal, and it grows. We're gonna make a scrap run in the future, and batteries I gotta take in, Bronco parts, you name it. It'll put the container right in line right here, but we gotta move all this stuff first. The other beauty is we can store D4s in this container. It's a 40-foot shipping container, and Dad's coming out today. He's gonna start working on the pad and moving things, but I'm gonna be a little busy because Jolene and I are going to the farm show in Greeley, but that's for the members if you're interested in that. Dad has definitely got this picked up, and we're ready to build a pad today. So I'll tell you a little story about when I turned 18. I got my driver's license when I turned 16 on the same day. I got my CDL when I turned 18 on the same day, and at the time, this was in the mid-90s, I was under what they called Class K restrictions, so I could only drive in-state here. And Dad said, hook up to the Heister trailer, load up the 936 loader, and go up to Willow Springs up in the mountains and dig this basement. So here I was, 18 years old, scared to death. And there was one other thing that I threw in my pocket before I left. And I always had this with me. Now, it's in this little leather case. It does fit on a belt, but this one's been broken for years. It actually fits quite nicely in the plier pocket on the side of a pair of dungarees. But what this is an eye level. And in the days before laser levels, and you were on a job by yourself, this is what you used to cut grade with. Now, we had made a stand for a transit that Grandpa made out of an old disc that you could set up the story pole and check your grade with it. But when you're working solo digging a basement, this is what you use.
This was just easier and quicker, especially for roughing something in, because you could just jump out of the machine with your stick or a tape measure, shoot to your mark, and it was a lot quicker than moving a stick around and going to a transit and reading.
Typically, we'd show up to a site, and most of these were for large custom homes, where the surveyor had already set an elevation grade. At times, we set the elevation grade, and our rule of thumb was, if you get it too high, you hear about it once, because people have to haul in a little bit of dirt. If you get it too low, you'll hear about it for the rest of your life. We would offset the stakes. Now, most basements had at least 2 levels. There were times we dug just simple crawl spaces all on 1 level, but usually there's a garage elevation and a basement elevation, so we would call that a split. and sometimes there was a walkout or garden level elevation, which was an additional split. After we laid out our stakes, and we would offset them 4 feet, so 4 feet out each direction, so the hole would grow by 4 feet, and that would give the foundation crews about 3.5 feet, 3 feet to work in a hole, 4 feet maybe, in a hole to set up the forms. And of course, we had to dig the hole so that it was safe. We called that OSHAizing it, and we would bench the sides.
Let's see where we're at. We are right here, about 3-4 inches lower right here.
So Dad's shooting over here to the bottom of this swamp cooler right here.
From there to the ground is 4 feet where you're standing. Okay, I'm right on that. I'm this is pretty much level. It's about 3 to 4 inches lower than over there.
I remember we leveled this when we graded all this out before. So we have a level area here where we want to set the container for storage. And Dad has already done what we would normally do, we call site prep, where we'd grub everything. After we laid everything out, the first thing we would do is strip the topsoil. You don't want any organics or topsoil underneath anything structural ever. It deteriorates, it degrades, it stinks if you leave it underneath concrete or wood, and it's just not structurally sound. It was not at all uncommon to arrive on a job site and the home builder would say, I haven't gotten a surveyor out here. I'm not going to lay it out. Can you guys lay it out? And we often laid out holes on our own with nothing but a set of plans and maybe a couple of property pins. Naturally, the customer paid us by the hour. Whether we were running the machine or not, they were paying us for the machine hour because that machine was on site. At the end, we were $175 an hour for our 938G. Our excavator was roughly the same, a little bit less, but that was a long time ago at this point, and with inflation, I'm sure it's well over that now. So first things first, we need to lay out our pad. This is pretty simple. We just squared it off the shop. We want the front of the doors even with the front of that small shop. And the pad's going to go out to that line there. And we've basically gave ourselves about a foot on each side width. So we're going to build the pad about 3 inches off the ground here. Now, we've already shot with the eye level, so we know where we're at grade-wise already. Because when we built this before, we leveled it. So we need to be, you'll be about 3'9" to the bottom of that swamp cooler there on the wall. I'm gonna go fire up the backhoe and I'll bring Dad material to spread in this pad. We pushed the container delivery back one day because of the weather that you can obviously see we got. I always hated days like this when after a storm, there's snow on the ground, the customer's pushing you, it's muddy, it's messy, and it really sticks in your bucket. You end up shoveling out a lot of mud out of your bucket. All right, John Denver, it's your time to shine. Dad's cleaning the snow off the pile. We want to make sure we don't have any snow inside of our fill material either. Backfilling on snow is a big no-no, and we're only filling about 3-4 inches with this material. It's pretty dry. If we're going any deeper than that, we'd probably want to mix it with some water. At least here in Colorado, water does two very important things. It actually helps rock and stuff bind and slip in together and lock in. But on drier material, it'll also take the swell out of it. So when you wet like dry dirt, it'll make it swell to its max. Yes, it'll settle a little bit, but at least it won't swell and break walls and break pads and break other things. It also helps it compact quite well. tolerance for grading was always plus or minus 1.5 tenths, which is a tenth of a foot. So if you divide a foot into 10 parts, it's slightly bigger than an inch. On something like this, it's far less critical because we're not going to waste yards of concrete if we're off a little bit. And ideally, yes, we want to have it perfectly level, but it's not going to matter quite as much with a storage container. So this is the eye level. I thought I was in high heaven when we actually got our first laser level, because this is all I used for 2 decades almost. Now it's magnified. It's got a little lens. This one's a little dusty. And a little peephole, almost like a full peep sight. This is extendable, which you'll want it extended. You want the longer sight radius, the better. Up here in the top, you'll see a little bubble. Now, Dad likes a fast bubble in his eye level, and I like a slow bubble. A fast bubble is probably more accurate. If you look through that peephole, and I'm thinking you probably aren't going to be able to see too much, let me see if I can get a shot of the sky. Now, maybe you can see in there, maybe you can't. Now, I'm going to unscrew this and show you the inside of this eye level, and they're very fine thread. Of course, all this is brass. I'm not even sure if they make this anymore. You might have a better view. I don't know if you could see inside there. Now you can see there's a, off to the side, there's a level bubble. Somewhere right in there should be level. If you can see that on the camera, I don't know. Maybe now. But your level is when that bubble is between those 3 lines in the very middle, split by that line in the middle. There's a small lens here, and this is very, very much like a target aperture on an Olympic style pew-pew. It tightens up quite nicely to keep the dust out of here. The top can be removed as well. The front can be removed for cleaning and gently brush the lens off. They get dusty over time, obviously. And you'll notice there's a little screw inside of there for adjustment. So you can adjust these, and we have. Occasionally they get dropped, they get out of level, things stop working. And the way that we would do that is we would have, in our shop, we had a place between about 20 feet difference where we could check it one side to the other, where we knew that it was exactly right. And we could check it with our transit, our laser level, whatever, and we knew that each side it should have to be level. There's also adjustment screws here, right there, and here to adjust the bubble. But realistically, these virtually never go out of level. So that line in the middle should split the bubble, and we are about 42, 43, 44, 45 inches. Since we're at 45 inches, that means we've raised this exactly 3 inches right here. I'm going to check the other end of the pad and see where we're at. Now, you always account for about 3 inches through the tape measure.
Yeah, you're an inch higher.
Yeah, we're an inch high, but you could feather that out and build this into the pad up a little bit, or widen this out.
On this corner too.
We're roughly an inch low on this corner of the pad. I'm gonna go get another bucket of material with the backhoe so Dad can dress this up. When you're talking about using an eye level, and these are made by Kuker-Ranken, K-U-K-E-R-R-A-N-K-E-N. We've had a lot of these over the years. Dad's is completely brass. Almost all the paint is worn off of it. This one was mine. We used to, ideally you don't want to use a tape measure. Tape measures are too flexible. We always carried like a 4-foot lath that we'd sit at home with a Dremel and graduate, and so that the side of the eye level would fit right in there, and it was way more accurate. Not only did we use these for basements, I also dug a lot of trenches and graded with this. We dug a lot of septic systems, septic field beds with these. So I learned also not to forget it, because if you forget this, Grandpa will have you on your hands and knees with a screed, which is a very straight 2x4, and a regular like carpentry or pipe laying level on your hands and knees grading. So that's when you learn not to forget things like this, and not to forget things like the transit. This was part of my kit every day: a water jug, a lunch box, and an eye level, and then I was usually met with a set of plans, and I would work from there. And I and Dad and Grandpa dug a lot of basements, laid a lot of pipelines, laid a lot of drains, did a lot of grading with nothing more than this. Most excavators today, they don't even know what this is. They don't know what a transit is. If they do, they don't know how to use it. But Trimble has pretty much taken over everything. Laser systems, laser grade check-in equipment. This was seat of your pants excavating. This is how we used to level things. And I don't know exactly how long ago they made these or when they started making these, but this is really old technology. But it is still valuable today. And I would not be afraid to dig a basement or cut grade like we're doing today, build a pad with one of these. We're looking for about 45 inches. My tape measures 3 inches, so I need to take up 45, 44, 43, 42. And then my eye level's another 1/4 of an inch, but we're not too worried about that right now. This is close enough for what we're doing. So I can shoot and I can see. If you do this long enough, you can see, I can tell that we're about an inch below that bottom of that swamp cooler. So we need to raise this side of the pad up about an inch.
So you're about 46.
46, yeah. So,
which is fine as long as the other end's the same.
Yeah, as long as we're the same, we don't care in this case. If you're building a house inside the city and they're going to check it, they care. So the way you would check it is to raise your eye level up or down accordingly, and then check your grade. To double check this end to end, I'm just gonna shoot to the bottom of the windowsill. Like, it doesn't matter as long as I have the same height here as I do on the other end of the pad. And the windowsill, all right, at the bottom of my tape, I got 32 inches. So technically my eye level is 3 more inches above that. Let's see what we are on the other side of the pad. Okay, this is a little bit high here, so I'm going to adjust this down and I can see how far I move. You're about 1.5 inches high.
Yeah, it's a little higher than here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you back drag this over to that end, it'll probably even it out. Basically what you're looking for is the difference that this moves up and down to your point of reference, wherever it is pretty much arbitrary. As long as you use the same point of reference, it doesn't matter. Now, typically when they would lay out a foundation, we would have a elevation grade, and they would say top of wall is, I don't know, 2 feet above this pin. So we would calculate for that. If it was footers, that was usually a 4-foot wall on an 8-inch footer. And if they were using wood forms, then we would give them about a 3-foot 10-inch wall on an 8-inch footer, because usually the ends of the wood forms would get dinged up and they couldn't get a full 4-foot. Aluminum forms, we could go right on the money. For a caisson, so those are the drilled piers into the ground, we'd go like a 3.5, usually about a 380 wall in the garage. And then for the basement, we would usually do what, a full 8-foot or 9-foot.
The last 20 years that we did foundations, we rarely did an 8-foot. Everything was 9 or 10-foot walls.
Kind of hard to see, but we're over on this end, we're 1.5 high. Over on that end, we're a little bit low. So if we back drag some of that over there, it'll be just fine. Dad's gonna just eyeball that, and then we're gonna sprinkle some of that rock on the whole pad. It's been a number of years since Dad and I have done anything like this. Kind of brings back old memories. Dad kind of likes this. I hope the tutorial wasn't too confusing about the eye level. It's one of those things I know how to do, but I don't know how to explain it well. This was always something my son was saying, Dad, we should YouTube what you and Grandpa do. Dad, we should YouTube it. Dad, people would love it. I wish I'd have took him seriously. That's why I'm doing this now. Because we're gonna top this with like 1-inch rock, it's not that critical. We can make it up with a little bit of that rock too. We're just gonna put about 1.5 inches, 2 inches of rock max. Just something to keep the container up off the ground and give it a little drainage underneath. That looks pretty darn good. 40-foot shipping container is about 8,000 pounds roughly, empty. I suspect Dad and I might be able to move it around or tweak it a little bit with the backhoe if we need to.
Want a little more over there? Let me get you a little over here.
We're fixing the drainage between the small shop and this container so that there's a little bit of a swale in here and the water can run out. Drainage, my boy! Daniel Day-Lewis, There Will Be Blood. That guy knew about drainage. If you're going to build a structure, drainage is the #1 consideration. Drainage and location. Soil, anything that affects the foundation. The very first step. Thanks, John Denver. I took you home on a country road to the place where you belong, in the shop here. This is our Farmall 400 radiator, and we tried and looked all over and nobody would fix it, so we bought an aftermarket one. It's a shame, these are really good brass radiators. The steering goes through the radiator though. I always thought that was kind of weird.
We're ready for our container.
Looks like the can will be here between 10 and noon tomorrow. The container company just called and said they'll be here in about an hour or so. They're loading right now. I've moved a lot of these things, but I don't remember them being this big. That's good. Right there.
Right there?
Yeah, try to get this all in one frame. It's pretty big. I don't know why this looks so much bigger than what we went and looked at this thing in the yard, and we walked in it. It was inside of other ones, so we were kind of wondering what kind of stenciling would be on the sides. I'm pleasantly surprised it is very minimal. Yeah. Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Nice.
It's hovering a little bit back here, but that's only for the last
You could stack
foot
a
or
ton
two
back here and it wouldn't matter.
No, it's going to be light stuff back here anyway.
Right.
Nice. That looks really good. NYK Logistics, a mega carrier. That's all it says. Pretty minimal damage. The thing about this place we got this from is that if it did have any kind of cracks or dings or dents or rips, they actually patch them and they'll put a little paint over them like this. Let's take a look inside. Notice, return this container in clean condition. I don't know what that smell is in here. It's very distinct. I can't quite put my finger on it. It smells familiar. All four corners have a bit of a vent, which is good because this is in the summer. I'm sure it's going to get super hot in here.
Oh yeah, there's the vent from the outside right there above the numbers.
So worst case scenario, we can drag this around with our backhoe.
You have to put the chain, wrap it around through these corners here where the pineapples go for stacking the containers.
And there's a little rust, but that's to be expected.
Might have said it before yesterday, but about 8,000 pounds empty. Max cargo weight, 58,000 pounds. Max gross, so that's with the container, 67.2. So, yeah. Pretty hefty.
And that's where we got it from. There's one more test to ensure that you have a good subgrade. Let's see. Well, our subgrade end to end is pretty good. It's almost like we've done this before.
Let's check it side to side and see how level we are. Yeah.
Unlike mechanic work, this is something Dad and I know how to do. It's like a dawn of a new era here. I do want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. That's with an eye level. I was just walking back to the shop and I noticed how funny head case looks over here. You've heard of squatted trucks and how silly they look. Well, at least I think they look silly.
How about a squatted D4?
That's actually the tractor that the leaf spring got flipped up above the hanger.
Not again. Why, Whiskers, why?